2 underscore photo 1. Okay. And then I'm going to choose horizontal. I'm going to leave it at 72 because I want the resolution to be for web. I also don't want it to be 150 like our last image because I need to use full images. I'm not cutting them up. I want to use a full background image, which requires the image to be larger. Remember to use the same search tools that you did last time. If you're using Google, hit tools and then search for size and make sure it's at large. Okay, great. Okay, now that I'm here, I'm going to File, Place Embedded. And then I'm going to choose Exercise 2 Final EPS. Okay, that is great. I'm going to do a few things here. So because I have 3 pictures, I just thought of this, so I'm actually going to change the name. I'm going to say Exercise 2, so I did File, Save As, Part 2, Photoshop. And I'm actually going to save all 3 images to this file. So I'm going to click on that ellipse tool or my paintbrush tool at the bottom to reveal my artboard tool. I'm going to click and drag here to the right of it and create a new artboard. And then I'm going to make sure I change the size. And I see here it says custom. I actually want web large, so I'm going to hit web large. Great. It changed that for me, and then I'm going to hit a plus sign again. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is go to my file folder and find my images. So I'm going to go to Project 2020, Illustrator Exercise 2, Photoshop Part 2. So I want to bring all these images in, so I'm going to click and drag. And I'm going to click and drag and place them into my artboard 1 for now. Okay, it opened in 3 different places. I keep forgetting they changed this setting, but I'm determined to make it work. Here we go. Okay, so I might have an issue here. So my first image, I'm going to stretch. I'm going to click and drag on the side to make it full width, zoom in, and it looks like pretty good quality. I'm worried about my other 2 photos, so I'm going to click and drag them over, make them as big as I can without cutting them off. Cut them off a little bit. Oh, it's actually really good quality. I don't know why they came in so small. Okay, so that is fine. And just so you know, if you did want to change this, right? So say you have a vertical picture, you could easily change this by going to the artboard tool and then clicking on the artboard, you could change it to be vertical, right? You can also change proportions. So you could click and drag on the little boxes on the outside to change that up and make it to exactly the proportions that you want it at. So I'm gonna go back a few steps. So for this, I can actually, I'm gonna leave them all to be 1920 by 1080 so that it's uniform, and I'm just going to work with the constraints here. And I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay, press enter to set it, and let's see how this photo does. Yeah, okay, it's good. So for here, you can see that the actual image is pretty good. Like the house is in the center, but I'm gonna pull it first so that it fits width to width, and then I'm gonna actually zoom in a little bit more so that I can see more of the house in my image. So that's where my drawing is gonna be, and I want my drawing really to be highlighted. So now if I look at my 3 images, I like what I'm seeing. I like that they're all really different. And then I'm gonna start working on them and trying to make them a little bit more cohesive. So at this point, I'm gonna hit File, Save. I'm going to go into my file folder and just make sure I am saving this all to the right place. So actually this Photoshop project is here, and I want it to be in my Photoshop Part 2 exercise. So I have two because last class, this is the one I worked on when I was showing you it. This is the one I'm currently working on. Okay, so now I have my pattern here. There's a few things I want to do. So for here, I think what I'm going to do is create a large, like I'm going to zoom in on my pattern, and then I'm going to try and cut out the shape so that it looks like it's no longer, oops, it's no longer the blue mosaics, but it's actually this like mushroom pattern. And they might blend. I'm going to see how that works. And I'm going to copy this. So edit, copy, edit, paste, or Control C, Control V. You know, I don't think I need to say that anymore, but just to remind you at least once a session. And so for this one, I know that I want it to be a little bit smaller. And so what I think I'm going to do is create two on each. So I want one on the lid and then one on the side and then one on this cup, and can copy and paste again, and then one on this cup, which is going to be, you know, almost not there because there's not a lot of the cup showing. And for here, I'm going to copy and paste it again, and I think I'm going to make it so that it's really large again on this side. And then yeah, and then kind of large here. I don't actually like how these are exactly the same, so I'm gonna make this much smaller then. And I'm gonna make it out to be like a pattern. That's gonna be my goal. So I'm gonna make these smaller. Control C, Control V. If it ever gets stuck and doesn't like, if it creates this X, you need to press Enter again. Remember that, so that you can continue working. Okay. Okay. So already when I zoom out, I can see, okay, I'm sort of going with 3 different directions, and I'm going to show you some techniques to make that happen. So I'll do the center one first. So for here, I'm going to make sure that I see what artboard I'm on. I'm on artboard 2, so I'm going to hide 3 and 1 for now. And then I'm going to use a couple of tools. So the tools I want to use are in Edit, Transform, but a lot of them are grayed out right now. So Distort, Perspective, and Warp, they are grayed out because this drawing needs to be rasterized. So we did this in the first project. When you use the stamp tool, you have to rasterize what part of the project. So you want to make sure it's the exact size you want it to be before you rasterize it. So I know this is about the size I want it to be. So I'm going to make it just a little bigger. And then I'm going to right click and rasterize layer. Notice how I've already duplicated my drawing a lot so that I have all these smart objects. So when I rasterize this one layer, it doesn't affect the other drawings. And that's really important because I want to make sure that they're all high quality. So at this point, I'm going to go to Edit, Transform. Let's start with Distort. So Distort doesn't look like it did anything, but actually now if I click on any of these squares, I can start affecting the drawing by changing the angle that it's at. And you can start to make some progress by just following the angle of the teapot, right? So say the drawing comes in at the bottom and it goes a little bit out. That's great. but my object is round and this is actually flattening the side of it, right? So I'm going to press enter to set it, but I'm going to choose edit, transform, and I'm actually going to choose warp. So at this point, I have a grid. And what's cool about this grid is it allows you to pull on specific parts of it, and it shows you that I'm actually creating a curve. So if I pull and imagine, you know, the shape of the teapot, it can start to take on that quality. This tool on the side, you might remember from the pen tool in Illustrator, it helps to control the sides as like one single curve, but you can also go in and click and drag on the line individually as well. So I'm gonna pull that, and I'm actually gonna pull these squares to about where the bottom of the teapot is. It's a little hard to see. And because it's hard to see, I'm actually gonna go and brighten it up. Oops, I have to press enter first, which is fine. I'm gonna brighten this up just temporarily. Okay, and then I'm gonna go back to edit, transform, warp. And now I can really get into like where the teapot is. Cool. And this has to lift at the top as well. Okay, at this point, I'm going to press enter. I'm going to hide the brightness and contrast, and I'm going to zoom out. So it started to take on a little bit of that curved quality. I'm actually going to go back one more time, edit, transform, warp, and pull this down so it looks like it's bulging a little bit more. Right, teapots are very round. Okay. And at this point, you know, you'll want to use some of the blending tools you previously used. So you can use opacity, for example. There's, of course, like darken that kind of loses it. But if you continue to go, you can actually get a texture through it. So screen works pretty good. Color dodge works really well. I'm going to keep going. I think I'm going to use hard light. I kind of like how the quality of the drawing isn't taken away, but the rest of the image is there. I'm going to pull it a little bit to see how I can adjust. Okay, cool. And then at this point, I'm going to use the mask tool. So click on make a mask, and you know, like we did in the first project. And then I'm going to use the brush tool to go in and soften some of these edges. So that's a little too hard. So I'm going to go here, reduce the hardness, and create this like kind of organic line around it. Okay. I'm going to erase here where that edge is. And actually for this, I want a much harder line. So I'm going to go here. I'm also going to cut that out here. And you know, if your hand's not as steady as mine seems, you can actually use the lasso tool, right, to like draw that. Oops, is that not working? So click on the lasso tool and draw. That's not very straight. So what I would recommend rather than the lasso is the polygon. So click, 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 right, and close. And then you only erase what's in here. I'm going to hit Control D to get rid of that. And I'm going to go back to my layer, click on the brush tool, flip it from black to white, zoom in much more, and try to bring it back on some of that drawing, right? That looks better. Too much, bringing back too much. So I'm gonna flip that again, go a lot lighter. Okay, so I think that's probably where I want that softness to be. I'm gonna double click into my mask here on the right, and I'm gonna make a feather around the whole thing. See what that looks like. Okay, I kind of see a difference. Cool, so that's a good start for now. So there's a lot to get through, so I won't do too much. So for this, I'm gonna go through it a little faster so that we can, have a short-ish video. So rasterize layer. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. I'm gonna place it about here. I'm gonna do edit, transform, warp. And then I'm gonna pull the edges really curved this time. Make it like it is on the actual top of the lid. And if you're having any trouble seeing this, remember you can always take the opacity down a little bit, and then that can help you see the edges. Clicking on that curve, lining everything up. Okay. It's pretty close. I could also go right over this, right? So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to go right over the top. I'm going to bring the opacity back for a second. So that's what it looks like. Just enter. And then I'm going to create my mask, bring the opacity down again, and then on that, even more, so I can see that background. And then on that mask, I'm going to go in and erase with my brush tool, which is down here. Yours might be up here. And I'm going to erase, start to do the edges. I need this to be much harder so that I can get sharp lines. Okay, so I'm getting it pretty good, pretty close. I'm gonna make this smaller. Remember, that's the right bracket tool or left bracket tool. Left bracket makes it smaller, right bracket makes it bigger, or you can go here to adjust the size. Okay, so that's good for the demo. And then I'm going to apply full opacity again. And then I'm going to do the same texture, which is the hard light. And I actually think I'll bring the opacity down on both of them to about 74%. Okay. So you can see that even if I don't do these, that's the texture I'm getting on my teapot. So I'm just designing my teapot as if I have made this, specific design for it. And for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going, but imagine that I would actually apply the same texture to the cups so that it feels like a complete set. Okay, I'm going to move on to this image. So if you have an image like this where you want to have the full image behind the mosaic, there's a couple of things you can do. So you could try to put this on top and look for the different textures, apply them, see what works, what happens. This is just a mixture of pictures. This is not the right move for the project, right? So, because if it's in the grout, it doesn't look like it's in the mosaic. It just looks like it's overlaid. But it might give me some ideas for like what could work. Like maybe the hard light is a good option again, or even vivid light. It would be kind of mixing with the background, which isn't a bad idea. Kind of like that one. Or even darken. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to click on layer 2, and I'm going to try and see how my magic wand tool works with the different layers. So I clicked on this, hoping it would grab the outline. It did not. So I'm going to hit Control or Command D. Click on the click into the, what's that called? Grommet? No. Grout and see if it grabs the grout. So it did an okay job grabbing the grout. So just to show you what I actually grabbed, I'm going to click on this mask tool and you'll see that I masked out all of the different areas. So that's actually not bad. So let's see if I pull my image underneath that image, it's starting to show through. It's not really that great. Like I can start to see what's happening, but it didn't work that well for me. It's not exactly what I'm going for. So I'm going to delete that for a second. Okay, and then I'm going to bring this back. So I think what I want to do is I want to grab the grout again because I kind of liked what it did to, like I liked how it isolated that from the mosaic tiles, but I want to actually cut that out of my top image. So what I'm going to do is after I've selected my grout with the magic wand tool, I'm going to click on the top image. I'm going to make it visible. And then while I'm clicked on this top image, I'm going to press select inverse selection. And then I'm going to click mask. Okay, that's a little bit better. So at this point, you can see that what actually happened was instead of grabbing the grout, I inversed the selection, grabbed everything that the grout that wasn't selected originally, and it brought me into this view, which is cool. It's like a mixture of the mosaic and the mushroom picture. So at this point, I'm going to go in to my brush tool again. I'm going to make sure I'm on my mask, not on the layer, but on the actual mask. And then I can go in and I can clean this all up, which is fun. So, you know, if I was doing this, you know, if I were a student doing this, I would probably take a lot more time on it. But essentially what I would do is go through these lines and clean all those spaces up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can definitely be very, very much improved with a little effort. So I'll switch this back to white and you can see I was just deleting everything that was left in the grout. I can also bring back what has been cut out here. And I think that will actually even be more effective in a short amount of time than deleting things from the grout. So obviously there are points in my mosaic though, so I want to make sure that while I'm drawing them back in, I'm also making this, you know, drawing tool smaller so I can get like a nice sharp point there too. So let's do a little area so that we can see the difference. So I'm going to go to this section here and then we'll compare it with this section over here in just a short minute. And I'm going to pause the video and then no, scratch that. I'm going to just show you so that you can fast forward if you want to, but if you want to see what I'm doing, you can see it. So I'm going to click and drag. And I'm dragging my mouse right now. So just remember that. Another thing you can do is actually use the polygon tool, and I'm going to use that here. I'm just making points. Oops. I'm going to close that and hide the properties because I couldn't see what's happening. Remember, when I deselect things, I always hit Command D. So you can also do this, especially if it's a very square shape or like angular shape. And then the brush tool, and then now I can make my brush tool really giant and it's only going to bring back what's in it. Hit Control or Command D. Do the same thing here. Some of it needs to be kind of circular, so that's what I have to address later. And it's okay if it's not all perfect because it is, you know, it's mosaic, so it's not always perfect. And then I think at this point, I'll take my brush tool, make it smaller, and delete some of the stuff that's inside here. Okay, I know I'm going over the lines a little bit, but I'm gonna fix it. It's just I'm sort of trying to reveal exactly what I need to fix. Okay, so this is the only area I'm gonna affect for now. Make this part bigger. Okay, I went a little overboard on that part, so I'm gonna go back. And okay, so you can see how, as I spend more time, I can make my whole drawing start to look like this section, and actually it would be a really, really cool implementation of my image. So I have this like flat surface. So you'll notice that in this image, I only use a mask tool. I didn't have to distort or perspective because it's an image that I'm viewing straight on. In this image, it's also like straight on, but the image has depth because the objects are circular. In this last image, I'm going to show you how to use the transform tool because the image is actually on an angle. And for the sake of experimentation, I'm also going to make this side big. Okay, and I want to try to remember if there is more. Yeah. Okay, so cool. So I'm selecting everything here. Moving it. And I'll do the same thing for here. Okay, so I'm going to start with this big picture on the left. So I'm going to line it up sort of along the edge here. And I'm going to turn it so it, oops, Enter, Control Z. I'm going to turn it so it lines up with that edge line. The next thing I'm going to do is press Enter, and then I'm going to right-click Rasterize. And then from here, I'm going to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to choose Perspective. So after I choose Perspective, I'm going to lower Opacity. And here you can see that I can actually click and drag on these corner bits to change the angle or the perspective of what I'm looking at. So I know that this needs to line up with here, but it also needs to come down a lot. So as I do that, you'll see this is really shifting. So it is a matter of like balancing it all out and trying to move them down. So the middle one helps you take it down without moving that edge. But it's a little bit of experimentation, trial and error. With every image, it's a little bit different. So we're starting to get somewhere. You can see that like the top angle, if I tried to drag the line, it sort of messes up the whole image, but it starts to get along that line. So I'm gonna drag it down even more. And I'm going to drag this image up a little bit. It doesn't need to be perfect, but I want it to be a little closer than this. Okay, I think that's better, bringing it in a little bit. And so what you're trying to do is imagine the house as if it were like extended, right? As if there was like you were finishing the edge, and you kind of see the edge here, but the perspective tool isn't always going to be perfect for that. At this point, like if I wanted it to be a little bit more perfect and fit exactly on this edge, what I could do is press Enter for now, and then go to the edge, look for this double arrow, make it a little bit smaller. And Okay, so my angle was pretty good and it's a almost picture perfect fit. So remember, this is at low opacity. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that edge here looks really perfect. So I'm going to line up the top and then I'm going to create a mask. And on that mask, I'm going to use my polygon tool to outline this line. So click once at the top, once at the bottom, then out to the left. One more time, I've made 4 points. So I have this selection. So now I can go to my brush tool and I can erase. So flip this to black, erase everything inside of there. Then hit Control or Command D, and I've already got this perfect line. So the other thing is I probably want it to not be applied to the balcony so that it actually looks like it's on the building. So I'm going to take the time now to cut it out of the balcony, which is going to be a little tricky because you can see that some of the balcony is see-through. So I'm actually going to double click to get out of that, Control D. And then I'm just going to, for now, outline the part that is not see-through, right? That is not the bars. And I'm going to just start with this, okay? I'm going to make it a little bit lower opacity because I can't really see behind it all. It's a little bit dark in this area. I can't tell exactly what the poles are. I think it's, so I'm going to leave that off. I know that I'm on my mask, so it's going to work. I'm going to choose the polygon and go here, move down here. I think that's probably correct, and it's going to be good enough for now. Oh, that whole thing is blocking the back, so all of this will be non-visible. So I'm going to go like this. Okay, close it up, bring this image back so I can actually see what I'm doing, and then erase. Okay, I also need to go ahead and erase everything outside of that is like bushes, right? So that's obviously not going to be viewable. I'm gonna like erase up to there because this is cut off here anyway, so it'll look more natural. And then the trickiest part here is going to be the railing. You know, that could take a lot of time, and that for me, I don't have that much of it, so I'm going to go ahead and just eliminate all the other ones fully, but then take a little time around these because it is more prominent in the image. And then using the brush tool again, erase everything. And I think that'll be enough to give it the effect that it's actually behind the railing. So let me zoom in now. All right, so you know, this is just at 47% opacity. So I'm going to bring it up to 100. And then again, you can go in and play around with like how that's applied. I want to see the image. I want to make sure my image is clear, but I also want the image to have a little bit of like the texture of behind it. So I think that difference isn't bad. So let's see. Oops. And there's also a window, which I think is going to be really important. So I'm going to bring this back down, do a few more of those edits. I'm going to freehand this because of time and just erase where I see the building and where it shouldn't, the image where it shouldn't be. Okay. And then, you know, you'll really want to use the polygon tool here to erase that. So anything that would not be part of the image, I will erase. Okay. Okay. Bring that all the way up back to 100. So you can see that mine's a little bit messy, but yours would be square. And then applying this, you know, I'm just going to pause the video and fix that up really quick. Okay, so recording again. So yeah, these are I fixed up the window squares a little bit by using the polygon tool. And then I think overall I'm going to double click on that mask and create a little bit of a feather so that there's some, that helps blend it all. Yeah. Okay, so that's really cool. I like how that came out. So instead of all of these, I'm gonna, creating the pattern, I'm just gonna create one more, for example, but I just wanted to show you this so that you know you could multiply it and make a pattern. But I think for this, it's gonna be most effective if it's just one more big one, and I'm actually gonna make it throughout over the whole building, which is really cool. Remember, this is still a smart object. It has this little box here. It's not rasterized yet, so I can do that. Okay. Press enter. At this point, I'm going to lower the opacity quite a bit. Okay, and then I'm going to, at this point, right click, rasterize layer, and then go to edit, transform, perspective. So just remember, we've used perspective, warp, and then the mask tool. Okay, so I'm going to bring that here. So the biggest angle here is at that top. So it goes from, you know, being smaller here to being a lot larger, not a lot larger, but significantly larger on the right. The perspective is going this way. So that's why the house gets bigger as it gets closer to the right side and where we are as viewers on the image. So get those as close as I can. The edge. I'm trying to line up the side with that line and make sure it's like actually on the angle. It doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, we can edit that with the mask tool. You can see that every time I move this, it's connected to the left, so it's not going to be totally perfect. But if I move it a little bit, it gets a little bit better. So it's, again, trial and error. That looks pretty good to me. Press enter. And then for this one, again, you're going to create a mask here, and then you can start going in with the polygon tool. So this would obviously take some time to make it look really sharp, but I can just do a few to show you. Control D, polygon again. But these elements, right, what cuts the cutouts and the perspective and the warp, this is what really makes it feel like it's part of the image and not something that you've just put over it. So here, I think cutting this out will be rewarding for this video. I'm going to cut it off of the roof, but leave it on. No, I'm going to leave it on the roof also. That's fine. Okay. And then actually, I'm going to now, on second thought, I'm going to cut it off, but make it a little bit more loose. Okay. Cut it off the roof here too. I'm just going to freehand this one. And that didn't work that well. Let's go back. So it's going to look off unless that's like a perfect line. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that with the polygon tool. Okay, and so a few more as an example. Just know that if, you know, I would complete this normally, not normally in class for demos, but if it was like a project. And I can like quickly go and erase this part, right? That was easy. And I'm going to do one more, which is this part of the deck. I'm actually going to Oops, I'm gonna go back up a little bit. Keep changing my mind. I'm gonna erase this part because I want to put a sign on. Okay, so at this point I've made a few cutouts. It's not perfect. I'm gonna bring it back up to 100 and then check back to what I used. I used difference, so let's add difference. So I do want them to have probably the same texture. That's kind of cool, but I think bringing down the opacity to, I think 70 might be better. I have it 100 here. I'm going to bring it to 75 also on the side. But I actually don't like as much what is happening in the front, the colors. So I'm going to go back to normal and see if normal might be it. So I think I'm going to choose normal. Just know you can also go in and change like hue and contrast after too. So obviously it's changing everything here, but I like that. The sky isn't too unreal. Grass and shrubs are a little pink, but that's okay. And the last thing I'm going to do is add text here. I'm going to call it Tea House. I'm going to make the text bright red. I'm going to change the font from Arial to Bauhaus. I'm going to make it 48. And then I'm going to turn it a little bit so that it's angled. And at this point, I'm also going to rasterize the type and then go to Edit, Transform, Perspective on the type. So you can see that, you know, there has to be a little bit of an angle, almost as if we were seeing it in person from the side. So I want it to be a little bit bigger onto the right and just a little bit smaller on the left. So I'm going to zoom out to see how that looks. That looks pretty good. Could be better, but no need for perfection all the time. So, and then I'm going to go through some of these options. And I think I'm going to leave it at normal. Bring down the opacity to like a really soft 88. I'm going to double click on it too to show you that you can do things such as bevel and emboss. And so that actually creates a bit of depth and it looks like it might be like a sign on the house. So I clicked on bevel and emboss and it gave me an automatic inner bevel. You can do outer bevel, pillow emboss, stroke emboss. So I'm going to go back to inner bevel and then you can change the depth and size of that to see what works best. You can soften it if you want to as well, which kind of takes it away. And then, yeah, play with the different ways that that's being applied in the highlight mode. Okay, so at this point, you know, say I cut out all my windows, I've played around with all the different opacities, I've cleaned up this drawing and I've set these in place. So I can look over it and I can decide, you know, any other highlight changes, adjustments, brightness, levels, etc. Make sure all my pictures are bright, make sure that my drawings are the highlight of my images. And at this point, I'm going to go to export, quick export as PNG. I think I said you can submit JPEGs, which you can. You can also submit PNGs. So I'm going to hit Illustrator exercise 2, select this folder, and then it should be working in the background. So if I go to my folder, Illustrator exercise 2, you'll see I have these 3 PNGs. So what you'll be submitting are these 3 PNGs and your Illustrator file. Okay. Another thing you can do is file, export, save for web legacy. But the issue here is you're going to get all 3 images in one, and we don't want that. So what I would rather you do, which is different than last time, is file, export artboards to files. And then here you can choose your folder, make sure it's in the right folder, Illustrator 2. This will just be exercise 2. Okay. And then you can see its file type JPEG, quality 9, 10 would be good too. I would say 10. It goes all the way up to 12. 10 is fine. And then hit run, and it'll run right in front of you. press OK. And then in that same folder, I save them to the same places, not that one. Not that one either. Hey, where'd it go? All right, so here I can go to projects, Illustrator exercise 2, and you'll see I have 3 identical PNGs and JPEGs. So it can be PNG or JPEG, so just 2 different ways to submit that, plus the Illustrator file.